The restaurant lights were soft and golden, the kind that made everything seem expensive and a little unreal. The air smelled of garlic, rain, and quiet money. Every table was filled, but the one in the corner drew all the invisible attention. The one where Luca Moretti, the man most people called Il Falco, sat in his crisp black suit, eyes cold as night over the Amalfi Coast. He wasn't there for food. He was there because someone had asked for a meeting, a peace talk between families that had been at each other's throats for years. And across the room, pretending to wipe down a spotless counter, Mia Rossi kept sneaking glances toward that corner table. She was new, only 3 weeks into this job, waiting tables at La Trattoria di Fiore, a place where men in $1,000 suits tipped in silence, and bodyguards waited by the door. She didn't know who Luca was when she started, but she'd learned quickly. Everyone here had. She watched him swirl his glass of red wine as the waiter poured. A smile flickered across his lips, calm, detached. But something about the moment made her uneasy. Maybe it was the tension at that table, or the way his guests, 3 men in gray suits, kept looking at each other instead of at him. Then she saw it. It was small, barely noticeable. One of the men brushed his hand against Luca's glass when he turned to speak. His fingers dipped just enough to drop something tiny, almost invisible, into the drink. The motion was smooth, practiced, over in a blink. No one noticed. No one but her. Mia froze. Her throat went dry. She looked around. No one else had seen it. The other waiters moved like ghosts, too busy, too afraid to notice anything. She felt her pulse hammering in her ears. She tried to think. What could she do? Who would believe her? She'd been told 100 times, don't get involved. Don't stare too long. Don't talk to them unless spoken to. But then she saw Luca lift the glass. Her breath caught. Her hands moved before her mind did. She grabbed a tray, pretended to stumble, and hurried toward his table. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. As she passed, she leaned down as if picking up a fallen napkin, her voice low, trembling, but clear. Don't talk, she whispered, barely moving her lips. Don't drink that! Luca's eyes flicked to her instantly, sharp and unreadable. For a split second, the world seemed to pause. Then, without changing his expression, he set the glass back down. Something wrong? One of the men asked, frowning. Luca leaned back in his chair, smile cool. No, nothing's wrong, but inside everything had shifted. He could feel the weight in her words. Her fear wasn't fake. He'd seen enough liars to know the difference. When the meeting ended minutes later, the 3 men stood, offering polite smiles and false pleasantries. Luca didn't shake their hands. His men stepped in immediately, escorting them out. He waited until the door closed before motioning toward the untouched glass. Take it to the lab, he murmured to his bodyguard, quietly. Then his gaze slid toward the counter, where Mia stood, pale and still, wiping her hands on her apron. She felt his eyes on her and froze mid-motion. For the first time, he really looked at her, at the trembling hands, the nervous eyes that had seen too much. She was just a waitress, just a girl in a plain uniform, hair tied in a messy knot, trying to survive a life that didn't notice her. But tonight she had noticed everything. He stood up slowly and walked toward her. The other staff stopped pretending to work. No one ever approached Luca Moretti, and no one ever wanted him approaching them. He stopped in front of her, his voice calm but heavy with command. Come with me. Mia's stomach dropped. I didn't mean to. He raised a hand, silencing her. You spoke when you shouldn't have. You saw what you shouldn't see. And yet... He paused, eyes narrowing slightly. You might have just saved my life. Mia's throat tightened. I just didn't want anyone to die. A faint smile touched his lips, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. You should have thought of that before opening your mouth in a place like this. Her breath caught as he nodded toward the door. 2 of his men moved closer. Take her, he said. We're leaving. What? No, please. Quiet. The word was quiet, but final. As the rain poured harder outside, Mia found herself pushed into the back seat of a black car, the door slamming behind her. Luca slid in beside her, expression unreadable. The engine roared to life, and the city lights began to blur through the tinted windows. Her voice trembled. "Where are you taking me?" He looked at her, eyes still cold. "To find out if you just saved me, or tried to kill me." And as the car sped into the night, Mia realized she'd just stepped into a world where truth and danger were the same thing. Rain streaked down the windows as the car sliced through the wet streets, the city lights breaking into scattered reflections of gold and red. The silence inside was heavy, thicker than fear itself. Luca sat motionless beside her, hands resting calmly on his knees, while two men in dark coats occupied the front seats, speaking only in looks exchanged through the rearview mirror. Mia sat pressed against the leather seat, her heart slamming against her ribs. Every sound, the wipers, the hum of the engine, the faint creak of her seatbelt, felt deafening. She hadn't meant for any of this. She'd just seen something wrong. She'd just tried to stop a man from dying. Now she was sitting beside the Mafia Boss of Naples. He hadn't spoken since they left the restaurant. His silence was more terrifying than if he'd shouted. Finally, Mia couldn't take it anymore. "I swear I didn't do anything wrong," she blurted, voice cracking. "You can ask the manager, ask anyone. I just saw enough." The single word made her flinch. He didn't raise his voice, but it carried a weight that could crush glass. He turned his head slightly, eyes catching hers in the dim light. "What exactly did you see?" Mia swallowed hard. "One of them, the man in the gray suit. He dropped something in your wine. I think it dissolved. I don't know what it was, but I saw it. I couldn't just let you drink it." His gaze didn't waver. He studied her face, every twitch, every blink, as if trying to decide whether to believe her or not. Then, after what felt like hours, he said quietly, "You're either very brave or very stupid." She exhaled shakily. "Probably both." A small flicker of amusement touched his lips, gone almost as soon as it appeared. "You work at Fiore's how long?" 3 weeks, she said softly. "I clean tables. I serve wine. I don't belong in whatever this is." He leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "You belong in survival. That much I can see." The car slowed as they turned into a narrow, unmarked street lined with tall stone walls. It didn't look like any part of town she recognized. The rain fell harder, thudding against the windshield like a heartbeat. "Where are we going?" she whispered. "To my place," he said flatly. "You'll stay there until I know whether you were part of this or not." "What?" "No, please, I have to work tomorrow. I can't." He cut her off with a look. "Your shift is over, signorina." Her eyes burned with frustration. "You can't just take me." "I just did." His tone was so calm it terrified her more than anger would have. Minutes later, the car stopped in front of tall iron gates. They slid open without a sound. Beyond them stretched a long driveway, lined with cypress trees that swayed in the wind. At the end stood a villa, white stone walls, arched windows glowing faintly through the storm. When the car stopped, Luca stepped out first, motioning for her to follow. His men didn't speak. They opened her door and gestured her out. Mia's legs trembled as she stepped into the rain. "Inside," he ordered. She hesitated. "You're making a mistake." He tilted his head slightly. "If I am, you'll live to tell the story." She didn't know if that was meant to comfort her or warn her. Inside, the villa was cold but beautiful. Marble floors, oil paintings, the faint smell of cedar and smoke. It was nothing like the life she knew. It was the kind of place people whispered about but never saw. Luca removed his coat and handed it to one of his men. Then he turned to her. "You'll stay here tonight. Upstairs, second room on the left. No phone calls, no messages." Mia frowned. "So I'm your prisoner?" "You're my witness," he corrected. "For now." She stared at him, trying to read the face that had made grown men flinch. But behind the coldness, she saw something else, a flicker of doubt. Of exhaustion. He walked closer, lowering his voice. "If what you said tonight is true, you might have saved me from something far worse than poison. And if it's not," his gaze hardened, "you'll wish it was." Mia didn't move, didn't breathe, until he turned and walked away. Upstairs, she sat on the edge of a bed that felt too clean for her world. Outside, thunder rolled across the hills, She could see the lights of the city far below. The same city she'd lived in her whole life, now suddenly out of reach. She hugged her knees, trying to keep her thoughts from spiraling. What had she done? What kind of man was Luca Moretti really? Downstairs in his study, Luca received a call. His man's voice was grim. "You were right to send the glass for testing, boss. It was poisoned, fast-acting, odorless. Would have killed you in less than a minute." Luca's jaw tightened. "And the source?" "Came from Petrelli's men. The peace talk was a trap. He said nothing for a long while. Then his eyes shifted toward the staircase, toward the room where the girl slept. If she was sleeping at all. "She saw what none of us did," he said quietly. "Keep her safe." "Safe, boss?" "From who?" Luca looked out the window into the storm. "From everyone." When Mia opened her eyes, sunlight was already spilling through the heavy curtains. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The silk sheets, the high ceiling, the quiet hum of distant waves, it all felt unreal. Then it hit her like a cold wave. She was still in his house. The Mafia Boss's villa. Her heart raced. She sat up, rubbing her temples. The night came back in fragments. The rain, the car ride, the warning she'd whispered, the way he'd looked at her like he was trying to see inside her thoughts. She took a deep breath and swung her legs off the bed. Her clothes from last night were neatly folded on a chair, clean and pressed. Someone had left a tray by the door, fresh croissants, orange juice, and coffee that smelled too expensive for her world. For a second, she almost smiled. Then the door opened. One of Luca's men stood there, tall and silent, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Moretti wants to see you downstairs." Her stomach twisted. "Now?" "Now." Mia followed him through long corridors lined with portraits of men who looked just like Luca. Hard faces, sharp suits, eyes that carried secrets. When they reached the end of the hallway, the guard opened a door to a sunlit dining room. Luca was already there. He sat at the head of the table reading a file, dressed in another immaculate suit. Without looking up, he said, "Sit." Mia hesitated, then obeyed. The room was too quiet. Even the ticking of the clock felt loud. He closed the file and finally looked at her. "You didn't sleep much. How would you know?" she asked before she could stop herself. A ghost of a smirk crossed his lips. "You have the eyes of someone who fought their dreams all night." She looked away, embarrassed. "Can you just tell me what's going on? I don't understand any of this." He studied her for a moment. "You saved my life. That much we've confirmed." Her breath caught. "So, it was real?" He nodded. "Poison. Designed to dissolve instantly. Whoever planned it was smart, but not smart enough." Mia exhaled shakily. "Then, I can go?" Luca's expression hardened again. "No," her chest tightened. "Why not? I told you the truth." "You did," he said calmly. "But truth doesn't erase risk. The men who tried to kill me last night know someone stopped them. They'll want to know who." Mia stared at him. "You think they'd come after me?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said it all. "I don't even know who they are," she protested. "I'm nobody." Luca leaned forward slightly. "You saw something you shouldn't have. That makes you somebody to them." She felt tears sting her eyes. "So what happens now? You keep me here forever?" "For now," he said, his voice low but firm. "You stay until I deal with the people behind last night." Mia clenched her fists under the table. "And then what?" He looked at her, eyes softening just enough to sound human. "Then you go back to your life. But not until I'm sure you'll live to have one." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Luca said quietly, "Eat something. You'll need your strength." Mia hesitated, then took a small bite of the croissant. The warmth of it surprised her. It almost tasted like safety, if such a thing still existed. As she ate, Luca stood and walked toward the window. He spoke without turning around. "You remind me of someone." "Who?" He paused. "Someone who used to tell me when I was wrong. Then you must have hated her," Mia said softly. He turned, a faint, rare smile ghosting across his lips. "On the contrary, she's the reason I'm still alive." Mia blinked. "Where is she now?" The smile faded. Gone. Something in his tone made her stop asking questions. Before she could say more, one of his men entered. Boss, Petrelli's men are denying everything, but we found one of their runners near the port. He's talking. Luca's expression went cold. Handle it. When the man left, Mia stared at him. You're going to hurt them, aren't you? He looked at her without blinking. They tried to kill me. They endangered you. What would you have me do, send flowers? She didn't answer. She couldn't. He walked closer, his voice lower now. You think the world runs on kindness, but it doesn't. It runs on choices. Last night, you made one. You chose to speak. You stepped into something that doesn't forget voices. Mia swallowed hard. Then maybe I'll stop talking. Luca studied her face for a moment, then said softly, I doubt that. That night, Mia couldn't sleep again. The storm had cleared, but her thoughts hadn't. She kept replaying the scene in her head. The poison, his eyes, the weight of his words. She didn't belong in his world. But for reasons she couldn't explain, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Downstairs, Luca stood alone on the balcony, phone pressed to his ear. Keep her under watch, he said quietly. She's not part of this. But if they find out she's here, she becomes leverage. He hung up, his gaze fixed on the dark horizon. For years, Luca Moretti had trusted no one. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, he trusted a stranger, and that terrified him more than poison ever could. By the third day, the villa no longer felt like a prison, at least not the kind Mia had imagined. There were no locked doors, no shouting guards. The silence was what caged her. Every hallway echoed too much. Every window showed too little of the world outside. It was as if freedom lived just beyond the glass, but refused to look her way. Luca had been gone since dawn. His men came and went like shadows, speaking in low tones, avoiding her eyes. The maid, an older woman named Rosa, brought her breakfast with a soft smile and a warning in her gaze that said, Don't ask questions. Mia tried reading a magazine from the library, but the words refused to stick. All she could think about was the glass of wine. The trembling moment when she'd whispered, Don't talk. How that single act had dragged her into a storm she didn't understand. By noon, she couldn't take the stillness anymore. She wandered downstairs, barefoot, into the grand hall that looked more like a museum than a home. There were old photographs along the wall, men in suits, soldiers, families posing in black and white. At the center was one picture that caught her eye. A younger Luca, no older than 20, standing beside an older man with the same eyes. His father, she guessed. Before she could look closer, a voice broke the silence. You shouldn't be down here alone. Mia spun around. One of Luca's men, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a gun beneath his jacket, stood in the doorway. His name was Carlo. I just needed some air, she said quietly. Carlo studied her for a moment, then sighed. You're not a prisoner here, but you're safer if you stay out of sight. The fewer people who know where you are, the better. Why? Because word travels fast, he said. Someone's already asking questions about the waitress who interrupted the peace dinner. Her stomach dropped. They know about me? Carlo's silence was answer enough. Luca won't let anything happen to you, he added quickly. But you need to be smart. Don't open the windows. Don't talk to anyone you don't recognize. Mia nodded, her throat tight. And him? Where did he go? Carlo hesitated, then said, He went to pay a visit to Petrelli. The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it made her shiver. Is he dangerous? Carlo almost smiled. To most people, yes. To Luca? Only if he gets lucky. He turned to leave, then stopped. You saved his life. That's not something he forgets easily. After he left, Mia stood staring at the photograph again, her reflection caught in the glass. The thought crept up on her slowly. What kind of man had she really saved? Meanwhile, across the city, the peace dinner's host, Vincent Petrelli, sat behind a mahogany desk, hands clasped tightly, his rings glinting in the afternoon light. The door opened, and Luca Moretti walked in. No bodyguards this time, no warnings, just presence, the kind that made a room smaller. Moretti? Petrelli said with a forced grin. To what do I owe this? Spare me, Luca said, his voice low and cold. You tried to poison me in a restaurant full of cameras. Either you've lost your mind or someone in your house has." Petrelli's grin faltered. "You think I'd be that stupid?" "I think you've always been that stupid," Luca replied, stepping closer. Petrelli stood, pretending calm. "You've got no proof." Luca tossed a small vial onto the table. "This was in my wine. My men traced the chemical compound. Your runner from the docks had it in his jacket pocket before he mysteriously stopped breathing last night." Petrelli's face twitched. "That doesn't mean—" "Don't finish that sentence," Luca interrupted. "Because if I have to dig deeper, I won't stop at your operation. I'll burn your name from this city." For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Petrelli forced a laugh. "You've gone soft, Luca. The old you would have shot me by now." Luca's eyes hardened. The old me wouldn't have had a reason not to. He turned to leave, but Petrelli's voice stopped him. "You think you can protect everyone, but you can't. You're one man, surrounded by ghosts." Luca didn't turn around. "Then you should pray I don't become one." Back at the villa, Mia stood by the window, the phone she wasn't supposed to touch clutched in her trembling hand. She had just dialed her sister's number when a reflection in the glass caught her eye. Movement in the trees. 2 figures. Dark clothes. No sound. Watching. Her heart froze. She stepped back, breath shaky. "Mia," a voice called from behind. She spun around. Carlo stood in the doorway again, his hand already reaching for his gun. "What did you see?" "Outside. There's someone." Before she could finish, glass shattered. Gunfire tore through the quiet like thunder. Carlo grabbed her and pulled her to the ground, shouting orders into his radio. "Contact, east wall. Move now!" Mia's ears rang. She couldn't think. She couldn't breathe. Carlo pressed a finger to his earpiece. "They're here for her. Move her to the basement!" The next moments were chaos. Men shouting, bullets hitting marble, the echo of boots pounding the hallway. Carlo half-dragged, half-carried her down a narrow flight of stairs into a dim cellar that smelled of dust and metal. He shut the heavy door behind them and turned to her, his face pale. "They found you," her voice broke. "How?" "No one knew." He didn't answer. Outside, another gunshot rang out, followed by silence. Carlo's hand trembled as he checked his weapon. "Stay here," he whispered. "Don't move until I come back." Before she could stop him, he was gone. Mia pressed her hands over her mouth to stop herself from crying. The basement was small and cold, the only light coming from a single bulb overhead. She waited, seconds, minutes, hours. It all blurred. Then the door creaked open. "Mia?" a voice said. Her heart leapt. "Carlo?" But the shadow that stepped into the light wasn't him. The figure in the doorway stepped forward, boots echoing against the concrete. Mia's breath caught in her throat as the dim light revealed his face. Sharp jawline, storm gray eyes, and a small scar running across his cheek. It wasn't Carlo. But it also wasn't one of the men who'd attacked. He wasn't wearing black like them. He was in a rain-soaked coat, no gun in sight. But there was something about him, something controlled, deliberate. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice trembling. He raised his hand slightly. "Easy. I'm not here to hurt you," her pulse thundered. "Then why are you here?" He glanced at the stairs behind him. "Because the people upstairs will. You need to move. Now." Mia's instincts screamed not to trust him, but she remembered Carlo's warning. "If I don't come back, it means they found a way in." She hesitated. "Where's Carlo?" The man's eyes flickered. "He bought you time. Don't waste it." Mia's chest tightened. "Is he—" "Alive, for now," the stranger cut in. "But if you stay here, you won't be." He extended his hand. "Come with me if you want to live." Every word in her mind screamed no. But something in his tone, steady, urgent, made her legs move before her thoughts could. She took his hand, and he pulled her quickly toward a narrow passage at the back of the basement. She hadn't noticed it before. A small steel door, half hidden behind shelves of wine crates. The man pressed a code on a keypad, and the door opened to a cold tunnel lit by faint emergency lights. "Move fast," he whispered. They'll breach the villa in 2 minutes. Mia followed, heart hammering. Who are you? I work for Moretti, he said. Or at least I used to. What does that mean? It means I'm the reason he's not dead already. Now keep quiet. They reached the end of the tunnel, a ladder leading up to another hatch. The man climbed first, pushed it open, and checked the street above. Then he helped her up into a small alleyway slick with rain. You're safe, he said, scanning the shadows. For now. Mia turned to face him fully. Why are you helping me? He met her eyes, expression unreadable. Because Luca would kill me if he found out what they planned for you. Before she could ask more, headlights swept across the alley. A black car screeched to a stop, and 2 of Luca's men jumped out, guns drawn. Boss sent us, one of them shouted. She with you? The stranger stepped back, tension in his shoulders. She's alive. You're late. One of the men lowered his weapon. Where's Carlo? Downstairs, the stranger said grimly. Get him before they do. Mia turned to him. You're not coming? He shook his head. They'll think you ran alone. That'll buy you time. Wait, what's your name? He hesitated. Adrian. Before she could say another word, he vanished into the shadows. The men ushered Mia into the car, and as they sped away, she caught one last glimpse of the villa in the rearview mirror. Windows shattered, smoke rising, the storm swallowing it whole. When they finally reached another safe house miles away, Mia could barely stand. She sank into a couch as one of the men secured the doors. Minutes later, Luca burst in, coat drenched, face pale with fury. Mia! Her head snapped up, relief flooding through her. You're alive. He didn't answer. He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. Not roughly, but with a quiet desperation that caught her off guard. For a moment he didn't speak, then he pulled back, eyes sharp. Who got you out? She hesitated. A man named Adrian. He said he used to work for you. Luca's expression froze. Adrian? His voice dropped to a whisper. He's supposed to be dead. Her eyes widened. He saved me. Luca turned away, running a hand through his hair. Then he's playing a dangerous game. What's going on, Luca? She asked softly. He faced her again, the ice in his tone replaced by something that almost sounded like regret. The people who attacked the villa weren't just Petrelli's men. Someone inside my own circle tipped them off. Adrian was my right hand until he betrayed me 2 years ago. Mia shook her head. He didn't look like a traitor. He looked like someone who still cared. Lucas stared at her for a long moment, then said quietly, Care is a dangerous thing in our world, Bella. It's the first thing they use against you. The room fell silent. Mia looked down at her trembling hands. Then why are you still helping me? He leaned closer, voice low. Because you remind me of the last person I couldn't save. Her heart skipped. Who was she? His gaze darkened. My sister. Outside, thunder rolled again as if the sky itself was listening. Luca stood, his voice firm now. Rest. You're safe here tonight. Tomorrow, we end this. Mia nodded faintly, though her mind was spinning. As he walked out of the room, she whispered to herself, Then what happens to me? From the doorway, without turning back, he answered quietly, That depends on how much truth you can handle. The rain hadn't stopped. It drummed against the windows of the safe house like a heartbeat that refused to slow. Mia sat by the fire, wrapped in a blanket too thin for the cold, her eyes fixed on the flickering light that refused to die out. Across the room, Luca stood near the window, cigarette in hand, his reflection ghosted in the glass. The silence between them was heavy, like something alive. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than the rain. You shouldn't have trusted him. Mia blinked, drawn out of her thoughts. Adrian? Luca nodded slowly, the ember of his cigarette glowing red for a moment. He was once closer to me than anyone, closer than blood. But power. He paused, eyes hardening. Power makes men forget loyalty. Mia hesitated. He didn't look like someone who forgot. Luca turned from the window, his stare sharp enough to cut. That's the problem with guilt. It wears the same face as redemption. Her heart twisted at that. He risked his life to get me out. Maybe he's trying to balance a debt, Luca said flatly. Or maybe he wants something more valuable than your safety. Mia frowned. And what's that? Luca's voice dropped low. Me. For a moment, all she heard was the storm outside. Then softly she asked, You really think he'd betray you again? He gave a short, humorless laugh. People don't change, Bella. They just get better at pretending. She wanted to argue, but the exhaustion hit her first. Her mind flashed back to Adrian's steady eyes, his urgency, the way he'd refused to take credit for saving her. Could someone who saved lives still be a traitor? When she didn't respond, Luca crossed the room and crouched in front of her. His tone softened, barely. You did good back there. Most people panic in moments like that. I almost did, she admitted. But I kept thinking about your words. You told me to trust my instincts. A faint smirk curved his lips. And you did. He reached forward, adjusting the blanket on her shoulders. His hand brushed against her skin, warm despite the cold. Get some rest. Tomorrow I have to meet someone. You'll stay here until I come back. Mia hesitated. And if Adrian shows up again? Luca's jaw flexed. If he does, you tell me before you breathe a word to him. She nodded, though part of her already knew she wouldn't. Hours later, when the fire burned low, Mia woke to the faint creak of the floorboards. Her pulse spiked. She turned and froze. A shadow moved near the door, silent, careful. Luca, she whispered. No answer. Her hand tightened around the edge of the blanket. The figure stepped closer, and when the lightning flashed outside, she saw the face. Adrian. He lifted a finger to his lips. Quiet. Her chest tightened. What are you doing here? She whispered back. Saving you again, he murmured. They're coming. Petrelli's men found the safe house. Mia's heart jumped. What, how? Doesn't matter, he said quickly. You have to go now, she shook her head. I can't leave without Luca. Adrian's jaw clenched. He's not here. And if you wait, you'll both die. He moved toward her, grabbing her wrist. Come on. No, she pulled back. You don't understand. He trusted me to stay. His eyes hardened. And that trust will get you killed. Before she could reply, a loud crash echoed from outside. Gunfire, shouts. The lights flickered once, then died completely. Adrian cursed under his breath. Too late. He pulled a pistol from his coat and pressed it into her trembling hand. Take this! I can't— You can! He snapped. You survived once. You'll do it again. Another burst of gunfire rattled the windows. The door splintered under a heavy kick. Adrian grabbed her and dragged her toward the back of the room. Go through the kitchen. Back door leads to the woods. Mia's pulse was deafening. What about you? He gave her a crooked, tired smile. I'll slow them down. Adrian, go. She stumbled out the back just as bullets shattered the front door. The air outside was freezing, her feet slipping on wet grass. Behind her, the roar of chaos grew louder. Shouts, gunfire, the sound of wood splintering. Then, a single scream. Her breath caught. She turned back toward the burning house, tears mixing with rain. Adrian was gone. By dawn, the safe house was nothing but smoke. Mia sat in the back of a car hours later, wrapped in another coat, Luca sitting beside her. His expression was unreadable, the faint scent of gunpowder still clinging to his jacket. He hadn't said a word since they'd found her hiding near the river. Finally she spoke. He saved me again. Luca didn't look at her. And how many of my men died because of him? She flinched. You think he set it up? I don't think, he said coldly. I know. Her throat tightened. You're wrong. He turned then, eyes dark and unreadable. If you're defending him, then you're either blind or in danger. I'm alive because of him, she whispered. For the first time, something flickered behind Luca's expression. Not anger, something heavier. So was I once, he said softly. The car fell silent again, but Mia's thoughts refused to rest. Somewhere deep inside, she knew Adrian's death, if he was dead, wasn't the end of the story. There was something about the way he looked at her, the way he said her name like it meant something more than protection. and she couldn't shake the feeling that Luca wasn't telling her everything. The storm had passed by the time they reached the city, but the silence that followed was worse than thunder. The black sedan pulled into an underground garage beneath one of Luca Moretti's properties, a half-abandoned building that looked ordinary from the street, but every wall hummed with hidden cameras and reinforced steel. When the car stopped, Mia didn't move. Her fingers were still trembling against her lap. Luca opened his door first, his movements sharp, controlled, the kind that made people step aside without a word. He glanced at her. "Come on." She followed him up a narrow stairwell that smelled faintly of oil and rain. Every step echoed. When they reached the top floor, a man in a gray suit nodded and held the door open. Inside was a wide office, dimly lit, with a single desk, 2 chairs, and a view of the skyline that seemed far too calm for the chaos they'd survived. "Sit," Luca said quietly. She obeyed, her heart still racing. He removed his coat, revealing a gun holster under his shirt, then poured 2 glasses of whiskey. When he handed her one, his tone softened, just slightly. "You need to drink something. You're shaking." She hesitated, then took a sip, the burn grounding her. "I don't drink," she murmured. "You do tonight," he said. Then, after a long pause, "Tell me exactly what happened." Mia took a slow breath. "I was asleep. I woke up when I heard footsteps. Adrian was there. He told me they'd found the house, that we had to run." Luca listened without interrupting, eyes fixed on her face, his jaw tightening when she said Adrian's name. "He gave me a gun," she continued quietly. "Told me to run through the back. Then the shooting started. I didn't look back." Luca leaned back in his chair, staring at the floor. "He stayed behind." "Yes." A bitter smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "That sounds like him." Dramatic to the end, Mia frowned. "You sound almost like you cared." His gaze lifted to hers, sharp again. "I did once." She studied him, unsure what to say. Luca sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Adrian was more than an enforcer. He was the one who kept me alive during the years when I trusted no one. But one day he crossed a line." "What line?" Luca's voice hardened. "He started helping the people I was ordered to destroy. Families, women, children. He called it mercy. I called it betrayal. When he refused to stop, I gave him a choice. Disappear or die." Mia's chest tightened. "And you think he chose revenge?" "I think guilt makes people do strange things," Luca said quietly. "Including saving strangers to make peace with their sins." Mia's eyes filled with emotion she couldn't name. What if he wasn't trying to make peace? What if he was trying to make things right? He leaned forward, his tone cold but calm. "There is no right in our world, Bella. There's only survival." For a long moment they stared at each other. 2 people who shouldn't have met, connected by accidents that no one could have planned. Then Luca stood. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow I'll handle what's left of Petrelli's crew." She didn't move. "And what about me?" His eyes softened, just a flicker. "You stay here until I say otherwise. I don't want another repeat of last night." Her lips parted, the unspoken fear pressing between them. "You're going after them alone?" He didn't answer. He just walked to the window, hands in his pockets. The city lights painted his silhouette in gold and shadow. "Some debts can't be paid with money, Mia. They have to be settled in person." That night, when Luca finally left the safe house, Mia couldn't sleep. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every word, every look, every warning. "He's supposed to be dead." That line haunted her, because deep down something told her Adrian wasn't gone, not yet. Her eyes drifted toward the small side table. The gun he'd given her lay there, cold and heavy. She picked it up and noticed something she hadn't before: faint scratches near the handle. Letters carved in tiny, uneven strokes. MM. Her breath hitched. Those were her initials. Before she could process it, her phone buzzed. A private number. She hesitated, then answered. A distorted voice came through. "Mia, listen carefully. Don't trust anyone in that house. Not even him." Her blood ran cold. "Who is this? Static." Then, Adrian, she froze. You're alive? Barely. But you're not safe. There's a reason Petrelli wanted you dead. Luca doesn't know the full story yet, but he will. When he does... The line cut out. Adrian? Adrian! Nothing. Just silence. Mia's pulse thundered. She grabbed her coat and the gun. For the first time, she didn't wait for Luca's orders. She was done running blind. By the time dawn broke, she was already gone. And Luca Moretti, returning to an empty room and an open door, realized too late that for the first time in his life, he'd underestimated someone who wasn't his enemy. The first rays of sunlight cut through the mist, glinting off the wet cobblestones as Mia stepped out of the taxi. Her breath fogged in the cold air. She pulled her coat tighter and looked up at the building that loomed before her. An old cathedral at the edge of the city, long abandoned, its stone walls cracked but proud. It looked nothing like safety, yet something about it felt inevitable, as if she had been meant to come here all along. The address had been scribbled on a torn piece of paper she found tucked in the gun's handle. Adrian's handwriting. Below it, one more message. If you want the truth, follow the bells. The bells hadn't rung in years, but she could still hear them in her mind. Soft, echoing, like a warning wrapped in faith. Pushing the heavy wooden doors open, she stepped inside. Dust floated in the dim light, filtering through broken, stained glass. The air smelled faintly of wax and old prayers. Adrian, she whispered, her voice barely a breath. For a moment, nothing. Then a whisper of movement came from the far end of the nave. A figure stepped from the shadows, limping slightly, wrapped in a dark coat that had seen too many nights. Her chest tightened. You're alive. Adrian smiled weakly, his face pale, one arm bandaged. Barely. She took a step forward, emotion breaking through the fear. I know, he interrupted gently. I made sure you did. It's safer that way. She stared at him, words tumbling out. You told me not to trust anyone. What does that mean? What's really going on? Adrian's expression darkened. Luca doesn't know the full story about you. Her stomach twisted. About me? What could he possibly... He held up a hand. You need to let me explain before you panic. Years ago, Luca's crew raided a trafficking ring that was being run by Petrelli's men. They killed the leaders, burned the records. But one file survived, a list of children who'd been taken. You were one of them. Mia felt the air leave her lungs. That's not possible. He nodded grimly. You were 6. A priest found you outside this same church. No one ever traced where you came from, until Petrelli did. That's why they wanted you gone, Mia. You weren't just a witness. You were proof of what they did. Her knees weakened, and she gripped the nearest pew to steady herself. Why didn't Luca tell me this? Adrian's voice softened. Because he doesn't know. Petrelli hid the truth, even from him. Luca thinks you're just some innocent caught in the crossfire. But when he learns who you really are... He hesitated. He'll have to choose between you and the only loyalty he's ever known. Tears blurred her vision. So what do I do now? Run, Adrian said simply, before he finds you. She shook her head. No. I've been running all my life. I'm done. Adrian exhaled. Then you'd better be ready for what comes next. Before she could respond, a low creak echoed from the back of the cathedral. Then the sound of boots. Multiple pairs. Heavy. Coordinated. Adrian's eyes went cold. He found us. The doors slammed open. Luca stood there, flanked by 2 of his men. His coat was still damp from the rain, his eyes darker than she'd ever seen them. You should have stayed where I told you to. Mia froze, guilt and fear crashing together. Luca, His gaze shifted past her to Adrian. You really don't know how to die quietly, do you? Adrian smirked, but his voice trembled slightly. Still playing the Godfather, I see. Luca stepped forward, every motion deliberate, predatory. You should have stayed in the grave I gave you. Would have been easier, Adrian said. But someone had to tell her the truth. Mia's heart pounded. Stop it, both of you, she shouted. You're not enemies. Luca's eyes cut to her, sharp. You don't understand. No, you don't, she said, her voice cracking. He saved me twice, and now you're ready to kill him. Again because of something that happened years ago? Luca's voice dropped low, calm in the way storms are before they break. He betrayed me, Mia. Men like him don't change. Adrian took a step closer, unarmed. And men like you never forgive. The tension between them felt electric. Every second stretched like a held breath. Then a new sound shattered it, the echo of clapping. From behind Luca, a slow, mocking rhythm. Petrelli stepped out of the shadows, his grin wide, flanked by half a dozen armed men. Well, Petrelli said smoothly, isn't this poetic? The traitor, the judge, and the girl who ties them both together. Luca's men raised their guns instantly, but Petrelli lifted a hand. Relax, Moretti. We're not here for you. We're here for her. Mia stepped back instinctively. Why me? Petrelli's smile didn't reach his eyes. Because she's proof, my dear. And in our business, proof is poison. Luca turned his gun toward Petrelli. You touch her, you die. Adrian moved in front of Mia, his own voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. You'll have to go through me first. Petrelli laughed. That was the plan. In the next instant, chaos erupted. Gunfire thundered through the church, stained glass shattered, and the sound of ricocheting bullets filled the air. Luca pushed Mia behind a pew as splinters flew past her face. Adrian ducked beside her, grabbing a fallen weapon. Stay low! Why are you both protecting me? She cried. Luca shouted over the noise. Because neither of us wants to bury another ghost. The shooting went on for what felt like forever, then stopped as suddenly as it began. The air was thick with dust and smoke. Petrelli's men were down, all except him. He stood near the altar, bleeding from his arm, but grinning. You think this ends with me, Moretti? He sneered. You have no idea who she really is. Luca raised his gun, fury in every line of his body. Then enlighten me. Petrelli's grin widened. She's your debt. The words hit like a gunshot of their own. Luca froze. What did you say? Petrelli's laughter echoed through the cathedral. Ask your father if you still remember where he's buried. Before anyone could move, he fired one last shot, not at Luca, not at Adrian, but at the ceiling. The old beams groaned, cracked, and collapsed in a cloud of dust. When the smoke cleared, Petrelli was gone. Mia coughed, trying to see through the haze. Luca stood, bleeding from his shoulder, scanning the empty doorway. He's gone. Adrian grabbed her arm. We need to move before he brings reinforcements. But Luca's voice stopped them both. No one moves until I know what that meant. Mia turned toward him, heart breaking. Luca, please. He looked at her, pain and suspicion warring in his eyes. What are you not telling me? And for the first time, she didn't know if she had an answer. The air inside the ruined cathedral was thick with dust, gunpowder, and the metallic tang of fear. Light streamed through the broken roof in fractured rays, falling over the wreckage of pews and shattered glass. Somewhere, water dripped in a slow rhythm, like time counting down. Mia's breath came shallow as she looked between the two men who had fought to protect her and might now fight to destroy each other. Luca stood stiffly, his shoulder bleeding through his shirt, the gun still in his hand. Adrian, pale and sweating, braced himself against a pillar, watching him warily. "Luca," Mia said softly, stepping forward. "You're hurt. Please." He cut her off, voice low but seething. "What did he mean, she's your debt?" She froze. Adrian looked down, the faintest flinch in his jaw. "You don't want that answer here." Luca turned on him, eyes burning. "Then give it to me before I stop asking." Mia's pulse hammered in her throat. "Luca." But Luca ignored her. He stepped closer to Adrian, gun still raised but trembling slightly. Not from weakness, but from restraint. "I buried my father 20 years ago. What debt could she possibly be?" Adrian's voice was quiet, steady. The kind that doesn't die with a man. That only made the silence worse. Mia swallowed hard, her voice breaking. "What are you talking about?" Adrian finally looked at her, eyes filled with something heavier than pity. Luca's father made a deal with Petrelli a long time ago, one that saved Luca's life when he was still a boy. In exchange, he hesitated, his gaze flicking toward her. Petrelli demanded something priceless. He took children from the orphanage his men ran. You were one of them. The world tilted. Mia staggered back, shaking her head. No, that's not... Luca's gun lowered an inch. "You're saying what? She was a part of a trade?" Adrian's silence said everything. Mia's voice was a whisper. "I was sold." Adrian's tone softened, almost apologetic. "You were collateral. Luca's father thought Petrelli would never collect. But when he did, you were too young to remember." Luca's expression hardened, disbelief flickering into guilt. "My father would never..." He stopped himself. Even he didn't believe it. Adrian sighed. "He would have done anything to keep you alive. Even that," the words cut deeper than any bullet. Mia stared at Luca, tears stinging her eyes. "So everything that happened, all this time, I was part of your past?" Luca's voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't know. I swear on my life, Mia, I didn't." "But Petrelli did," Adrian said grimly. "That's why he's been circling you like prey. You weren't random. You were leverage. The truth hung in the air, cruel and unrelenting." Luca turned, pacing a few steps, hand running through his hair. "So that's why he wanted her gone, to erase the last thread tying me to the old debt." Adrian nodded. "He's not done either. Petrelli's been rebuilding. The fire at the docks, the ambush at your restaurant, all part of his message." Luca's eyes narrowed. "Then I'll send him one back." Mia flinched. "Luca, please don't." He looked at her, and for a moment, the rage faded into something fragile. "You don't understand. He won't stop until he has you or he's dead." "Then I'll disappear," she said quickly. "You can tell him I'm gone. You can..." "No." His tone was final, unyielding. "He'll never believe it. And I'll never forgive myself if I let you vanish like another ghost from my past." Adrian stepped forward, limping slightly. "You're not thinking straight. You go after Petrelli now, you'll die." Luca's lips curved into a cold, humorless smile. Maybe that's what he's counting on. Mia's tears finally broke. "Please, stop talking like that." He looked at her again, and this time, the walls around him cracked. "Mia, my whole life has been about debts. To men, to blood, to ghosts. I don't want you to become one of them." Her voice trembled. "Then stop acting like this is the only way to save me." But he was already walking away. Adrian moved to block him. "If you walk out that door, Petrelli wins. You'll give him what he wants. Chaos. And she'll lose both of us." For the first time, Luca hesitated. Mia stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Luca, look at me," he turned. Her eyes were red but fierce. "You saved my life once. Let me save yours now." The tension between them was thick, a fragile breaking thread. Then the sound of a phone shattered it. Luca's ringtone, sharp, urgent. He pulled it from his pocket, frowning. "Unknown number," he answered. "Moretti," a voice spoke, cold, calm, cruel. "You're running out of time," Luca froze. "Petrelli," the voice chuckled. "You really think I'd run from you? You forget, I still have leverage. The girl isn't the only debt your father left behind." Luca's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "I have something else you might care about," Petrelli purred. "Check your email." The call ended. Luca tapped his phone furiously. A new message flashed on the screen. His jaw locked. "What is it?" Mia asked. He turned the screen toward her. The image showed a woman, older, bound to a chair, her face bruised but familiar. Mia gasped. "Who is that?" Luca's voice was hollow. "My mother," Adrian swore under his breath. "He's escalating." Mia grabbed Luca's arm. "Then let's call the police." He shook his head violently. "No, this isn't their war." She looked at him desperate. "Then what will you do?" He slipped the phone into his pocket, his expression unreadable now. The softness gone, replaced by the same steel that had built his empire. "I'll finish what my father started." Mia's heart sank. "That means killing him." Luca met her gaze, eyes like cold fire. "It means ending the debt, one way or another." Adrian cursed again, stepping closer. "You're not thinking. Petrelli expects that. You'll walk into a trap." Luca's hand rested briefly on his shoulder, a rare moment of respect. "Then pray it's one I can walk out of." He turned to Mia, voice lowering. "If I don't make it back—" "Don't," she cut in. "Don't say that." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his hand lingering for just a second. "You once told me you believed in fate. Maybe you were right. But if it exists, I hope it's kind to you." Her eyes filled with tears. "Luca?" But he was already walking toward the cathedral doors, leaving her standing in the wreckage, her heart breaking in silence. Adrian sighed, watching him go. "He's not coming back the same, if at all." Mia wiped her tears, voice trembling but steady. "Then I'm not staying behind this time." Adrian looked at her sharply. "Mia, I'm done being someone else's collateral," she said. "If this ends tonight, I'm ending it with him." Adrian studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then we do this together." And as the last light of day faded through the shattered, stained glass, two souls, one bound by guilt, the other by love, followed the Mafia Boss into the fire. Night had swallowed the city whole. The streets were empty, slick with the memory of rain. Streetlights flickered over cracked asphalt, stretching long shadows that seemed to follow Luca's car as it weaved through the industrial district. In the back seat sat two men, loyal, silent, trained to follow orders without question. But tonight, even they could feel the change in their boss. Luca Moretti wasn't just a man on a mission. He was a storm looking for the eye. He said nothing the entire ride, his mind replaying Petrelli's words. The image of his mother bound and bruised burned behind his eyes. Every second that ticked by made the rage inside him colder, sharper. When the car finally rolled to a stop outside the warehouse, Luca stepped out without waiting for the engine to quiet. The air smelled of salt and metal, the docks. The building in front of him loomed against the fog, an old shipping depot long abandoned by day, but alive by night, with ghosts of old deals and new betrayals. He adjusted his coat, slipped a gun into his hand, and nodded once. "Stay close. No one fires unless I say." Inside, the air was damp, filled with the faint buzz of generators and the low hum of fluorescent lights. Crates were stacked high like walls, creating narrow corridors of shadow. A voice echoed from somewhere in the dark. "I was wondering how long it would take you." Luca's grip tightened on his gun. "Where is she?" Petrelli stepped out from behind a crate, dressed in his usual tailored arrogance. His silver hair gleamed under the dim lights, his smile casual, as if they were old friends meeting for a drink. "Always straight to business," Petrelli said smoothly. "You haven't changed a bit." Luca's voice was low, deadly. "Where is she?" Petrelli tisked softly. "You're not in a position to make demands. But if you must know," he motioned toward the upper floor. "She's quite comfortable considering the circumstances." Luca took a step forward, but Petrelli's men emerged from the shadows. 10, maybe more, guns drawn. Petrelli said. wagging a finger. Don't ruin my hospitality. Luca didn't flinch. You really think this ends with you alive? Petrelli chuckled. Oh, Luca, this isn't about me living. It's about you breaking. At that moment, another door creaked open behind the crates. 2 figures stepped in, Mia and Adrian. Petrelli's smile widened. Perfect. The audience arrives. Luca's eyes widened as he saw her. Mia, what the hell are you doing here? I wasn't staying behind, she said, voice trembling but strong. You shouldn't have come, he snapped. Adrian's tone was calm but firm. Neither should you. The standoff was seconds from chaos. Petrelli clapped his hands once, the sound echoing. Now that everyone's here, let's talk about debts, shall we? He turned his gaze toward Mia. Your life has been bought and sold more times than you can count, my dear. But do you know what amuses me most? You don't even know your real name. Mia's heart skipped. What are you talking about? Petrelli smirked. You're not just a random orphan. You're Luciana Moretti. The room went dead silent. Luca blinked, stunned. What did you say? Petrelli stepped closer, his words slow, deliberate. Luciana, the daughter your father thought had died as a child. Mia shook her head violently. No, that's not true. But Luca's voice broke through, hoarse. My sister died in the fire. I buried her? Petrelli laughed. Did you, though? Or did your father bury someone else while his real daughter was sold off to clear his sins? The floor seemed to fall away beneath them. Mia's knees buckled. No, this can't. Luca's gun lowered slowly, his face pale. If you're lying, I'll end you right now. Petrelli shrugged. Believe what you want. The truth doesn't need your permission. He tossed a file onto the ground. Papers scattered. Birth certificates, photos, DNA reports, all stamped and marked. The same scar that curved behind Mia's ear was circled in red ink in one of the pictures labeled Luciana Moretti, age 5. Adrian's breath hitched. My God. Luca staggered back, the gun slipping slightly in his grip. His entire world tilted. You're saying she's... Petrelli's grin turned cruel. Family. The only family you have left. Mia shook her head, tears streaming. That's not possible. I can't... Luca stepped toward her, his voice barely above a whisper. Mia, show me the back of your ear. She hesitated, then brushed her hair aside. The scar gleamed faintly under the light. Luca's chest rose and fell. That scar? I used to trace it when you were a baby so you'd stop crying. She stared at him, disbelief warring with grief. You remember that? I could never forget, he said quietly. Petrelli's voice cut through the silence. Touching. But the family reunion comes at a price. He snapped his fingers. 2 men dragged a figure forward. Luca's mother, tied and gagged, her eyes swollen but alive. Luca's rage returned in a flash. Let her go. Petrelli's smile never faltered. You want them both to live? Then put the gun down. Luca hesitated. Adrian raised his weapon instead. He's bluffing. Petrelli turned toward him, amused. Oh, the ghost still walks. Tell me, Adrian, how many times have you switched sides in this little play? Adrian's jaw tightened. Once. And I'll die on the right one this time. Brave, Petrelli said. And then the room erupted in gunfire. Luca pushed Mia down behind a crate as bullets tore through the air. Adrian fired back, dropping 2 men instantly. Petrelli ducked behind cover, shouting orders. The warehouse became a war zone. Flashes of light, screams, the crash of falling metal. Luca crawled toward his mother, cutting the ropes with a shard of glass. Mama, stay down! She coughed weakly, clutching his hand. Luca, basta, please! I'm ending this, he said. From behind them, Petrelli shouted, You can't kill the past, boy. It always crawls back for you. Luca stood, gun raised, but Petrelli had already aimed. The shot rang out before either could move. Mia screamed. Adrian lunged, and when the smoke cleared, Petrelli lay bleeding on the floor, and Adrian was on his knees beside him, his own blood blooming through his shirt. Luca rushed over, grabbing him. No, stay with me. Adrian smiled weakly, his hand trembling. Guess I switched sides one last time. Don't you dare, Luca hissed. Not now. Adrian's eyes flicked to Mia. Keep him human. He forgets how to be. Then his hand went limp. Mia covered her mouth, sobbing. Luca's jaw clenched, every muscle trembling, but no tear fell. He stood, turned to Petrelli, who was still breathing, and without hesitation, fired one clean shot to the heart. It was over. The silence afterward was heavy, sacred, final. Luca stood there, surrounded by smoke and death, until Mia's small, broken voice reached him. "Brother?" He turned slowly, the word like sunlight in the dark. For the first time in his life, the Mafia boss's eyes softened completely. "Yeah," he whispered. "Brother." The morning after the gunfire, the city felt quieter than it should have. The rain hadn't stopped since dawn, soft, steady, and unending, as if the sky itself refused to forget. The warehouse still smelled of smoke and sorrow. Mia stood near the open bay doors, her coat soaked through, hair clinging to her face. Her eyes were red, but no more tears came. She had run out of them hours ago. Behind her, Luca knelt beside a black tarp. Adrian's body lay beneath it. His face looked peaceful now. Too peaceful for a man who had lived most of his life in the crossfire. Luca had been silent since the moment he pulled the trigger on Petrelli. No orders, no words. Just that same look in his eyes, cold, distant, and unbearably tired. Mia stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. "We should bury him." He didn't look up. "He'd hate that." "What?" Luca finally glanced at her. "He used to say funerals are for the living, not for men like us. Said we get our peace in pieces." Mia swallowed hard. "Then at least say something for him." Luca's jaw flexed. He looked at Adrian's face one last time. "He was a liar, a traitor, and a pain in my neck," he said quietly. "But he was also the only man who ever told me the truth when it mattered. I'll take that over loyalty any day." He stood, pulling his coat tighter. "We'll take him to the docks. Let the sea keep him," Mia nodded slowly. "He saved us both." Luca didn't respond, but his silence said enough. Hours later, they stood by the edge of the pier. The rain blurred the line between sky and sea. Luca's men lifted the tarp carefully and slid Adrian's body into the water. The splash echoed like a closing door. Mia closed her eyes. "Goodbye," she thought. "And thank you." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Luca finally turned, looking out at the horizon. "He told me once," Luca murmured, "that every man leaves behind a debt he can't repay. I think I just paid mine." Mia looked at him. Adrian would have said, "You're not done yet." He almost smiled. Yeah, he would have. They stood there in silence, just two figures under the gray sky, bound by blood, by loss, by everything they never asked for. When they finally left the docks, Luca drove in silence. His mother was safe now, hidden away in one of his properties on the outskirts of town, guarded by people he trusted with his life. But peace, if it existed, still felt miles away. Mia leaned her head against the window. "Do you think it's really over?" Luca kept his eyes on the road. "It's never over. Not in this life. But we could leave," she said softly. "Start somewhere else. You could disappear, Luca. We both could." He chuckled, low and bitter. "You don't just walk away from this world, Mia. It follows you like a shadow." She looked at him, her expression gentle but firm. "Then maybe it's time to stop running and start living." For a brief second, he met her eyes. There was something there, the smallest flicker of warmth, like a dying ember refusing to go out. Later that night, back at the Moretti estate, the lights were dim. The mansion felt emptier than usual, haunted not by ghosts, but by what they had survived. Mia sat by the fireplace, a blanket around her shoulders. She hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. The flames danced across her face as she stared into them, lost in thought. She didn't hear Luca walk in until he spoke. "You're still awake." She turned slightly. "Couldn't sleep," he nodded. "Neither could I." He poured himself a drink but didn't touch it. For a long moment, they just sat there in the quiet. Then Mia broke the silence. "I keep thinking about what Petrelli said. About us." Luca's expression darkened. "He said a lot of things. Not all of them true. But some of them were," she said quietly. I saw the files, Luca, the dates, the hospital records. I was there. He looked into the fire. I don't need blood tests to know you're my sister. She blinked back tears. Then what happens now? He took a slow breath. Now, we figure out who we are without him. Mia nodded slowly. Do you ever think about leaving? Just walking away from all this? Every day, he admitted. But every time I try, something pulls me back. It's like this city's built on invisible chains. Mia smiled sadly. Then maybe we break them. Luca glanced at her. You think we can? I think we have to. For a moment, their eyes met. Not as strangers, not even as survivors, but as two broken halves of the same past trying to become whole. The sound of rain against the window filled the room. Luca finally spoke. You should rest. So should you. He stood, setting the untouched glass on the table. Tomorrow we'll decide what comes next. As he turned to leave, Mia's voice stopped him. Luca? He looked back. She hesitated, then said softly, Thank you. For finding me. He gave her a faint smile. You found me first. When he left, the silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, Mia felt like she could breathe. But peace in their world never lasted long. Hours later, while the mansion slept, Luca sat alone in his study. The old grandfather clock ticked behind him, steady and patient. A single lamp lit the desk, where papers, maps, and an old photograph were spread out. The photo showed their father, younger, smiling, holding a little girl with a scar behind her ear. Luca traced the photo's edge with his thumb, his eyes distant. I did what you couldn't, he whispered. I made it right. Then he leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and for the first time in his life, let himself feel tired. Outside, the rain finally stopped. But far across the city, in a dim hospital corridor, a man in a white coat walked slowly down the hall. He reached a locked door, checked the nameplate, Giovanni Petrelli, and smiled faintly. The lights flickered once, and inside, a hand moved beneath the sheets. Petrelli was still alive. The news reached them 3 days later. Mia was in the kitchen making coffee when the old landline rang. A sound that hadn't echoed through the mansion in years. She frowned, wiping her hands on a towel before answering. Hello? A familiar voice spoke on the other end, low and shaken. It's Marco, from the docks. Her pulse quickened. Marco, what happened? There was a pause. You need to tell Luca something. What is it? Petrelli's alive. The mug slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor. She barely heard the rest. Something about a hospital, guards, someone pulling strings. But by then, her heart was already pounding too loud to listen. By the time Luca walked into the room, she was pale, trembling, glass scattered around her feet. Mia. She looked up slowly. He's alive. Luca froze mid-step. What? Petrelli. Marco just called. He's in St. Helena Hospital. They moved him there last night under police protection. For a long moment, Luca said nothing. His face didn't move, but his eyes, they went dark. How? He muttered. I shot him. I saw him die. Maybe not enough, she whispered. He turned away, jaw tightening. That means someone's backing him. Someone powerful. Then we go to the police, Mia said quickly. We tell them everything. He spun around, cutting her off. No, that's exactly what Petrelli wants. You think he's lying in that hospital bed for nothing? He's baiting us, Mia's voice shook. Then what do we do? Luca looked at her. Not as the Mafia Boss this time, but as a man haunted by every choice he'd made. We finish this. For good, she swallowed hard. You mean kill him? I mean make sure he never hurts anyone again. That night, the mansion was silent except for the rain outside. Luca stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the holster beneath his jacket. His reflection looked like a ghost, hollow-eyed, unshaven, worn down by too many nights without peace. Mia stood by the door, watching him. You can't do this alone. I've done worse, and you almost died. He didn't look at her. I won't make the same mistakes twice. She stepped closer, her voice trembling but firm. You can't keep carrying all this alone, Luca. The debts, the deaths, the guilt. It'll bury you. He met her gaze finally. It already did. She wanted to argue, but his tone left no space. Instead, she said softly, "Then promise me one thing." He raised a brow. "What?" "If you go, you come back." He hesitated for a long moment, then nodded once. "I'll try." It wasn't the promise she wanted, but it was all she was going to get. At 2 a.m., the city slept while Luca's black car rolled through its empty veins. St. Helena Hospital stood like a lonely fortress at the end of the street, its windows glowing faintly against the fog. 2 police cars were parked out front. Security lights swept across the lot like slow, mechanical eyes. Luca parked a block away. He stepped out, adjusting his gloves, and disappeared into the shadows. He didn't need blueprints. He'd studied this place before. Too many of his own men had ended up in hospitals like this. He knew where cameras pointed, where guards rotated, where blind spots waited. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, sterile and cold. He moved quietly down the hall, every step calculated. Then he saw him, through a small window in the door at the far end of the corridor. Giovanni Petrelli. Pale, hooked up to monitors, his body wrapped in bandages. His chest rose and fell slowly, rhythmically. Alive. Luca's hand tightened around his gun. He opened the door without a sound. Petrelli didn't move. Luca stepped closer, every muscle tense. He pressed the barrel to the man's temple. "You should have stayed dead." But then, the faintest smirk crossed Petrelli's lips. Luca froze. Petrelli's eyes opened, calm and cruel. "And missed the chance to see you lose everything?" Before Luca could react, the room filled with red lights and alarms. Hidden sensors flashed above the door, motion triggered. Within seconds, footsteps thundered down the hall. Luca cursed under his breath, ripping the wires from Petrelli's monitors. "You set me up," Petrelli chuckled weakly. "No, Luca, you did. You walked right back into the trap you built." 2 guards burst into the hallway. Luca spun, fired twice. Both men dropped instantly. He turned back, eyes blazing. "Tell me who helped you." Petrelli's laugh turned to a cough. "You really don't know? She's closer than you think." "What?" Petrelli's smile widened. "You always trusted the wrong people." The next second, gunfire erupted from the doorway behind him. Not from guards, but from someone else. The bullets whizzed past Luca's shoulder, hitting the window. He dove for cover, firing back. When the smoke cleared, he saw her. His own lieutenant, Diana Russo, stepping into the room, her gun still raised. Luca's voice was cold steel. "You?" she smirked. "You always were predictable, boss." He shook his head slowly. "Petrelli paid you?" "Oh, he offered me more than money," she said. "He offered me your seat." Petrelli's weak laughter filled the room. "You see, Luca? Loyalty dies faster than love." Luca fired first. The shot hit Diana's arm. She dropped her gun, staggering back. Another shot from her missed, hitting the oxygen tank instead. The explosion ripped through the room in a burst of fire and sound. Glass shattered, flames roared, and the ceiling cracked. Luca shielded his face, dragging Petrelli's bed away from the blast as alarms screamed through the building. Smoke filled the hallway. Guards shouted. Somewhere, Mia's voice echoed faintly in his mind. "Promise me you'll come back." He kicked the burning debris aside, coughing hard. Petrelli was unconscious now, but alive. Barely. Luca stared at him for a long, heavy second, then looked toward the burning door. "You don't get to decide how this ends." He pulled his gun and fired one last shot, straight into the oxygen line. Flames swallowed the bed in an instant. Luca turned and ran. By the time he burst through the emergency exit and into the rain, the entire top floor was burning. Sirens wailed in the distance. He collapsed against the nearest car, breathing hard, drenched in sweat and smoke. Somewhere behind him, the hospital lights flickered, then went out. Petrelli was gone. This time for real. Or so he thought. Back at the mansion, Mia waited by the window all night, her fingers clutching the cross pendant she'd worn since childhood, the only thing she'd ever kept from her past. When Luca finally returned at dawn, Covered in soot and silence, she ran to him. "You're hurt," she whispered. "I've been worse." Her eyes searched his face. "It's over, isn't it?" He hesitated, then nodded. "It's over." But deep down, he knew. The kind of men like Petrelli didn't die easy, and the kind of ghosts they left behind never stayed buried. The storm had passed, but inside the Moretti mansion, the air was still heavy, the kind that pressed against the chest like an unspoken truth. Mia sat by the window, the first sunlight of morning cutting soft gold lines across her face. Her fingers traced the tiny silver cross that hung from her neck, the one she'd worn since before she could remember. Luca stood a few feet away, watching the world wake up through the glass. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Mia whispered, "I used to think this necklace was just mine, a piece of my mother. But now I'm not even sure who gave it to me." Luca turned. His voice was quiet but firm. "You don't need the past to know who you are." She smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But sometimes it feels like the past still owns me." He walked over and leaned against the window beside her. "We both carry ghosts, Mia. We just pretend they're shadows." She looked up at him. "Then what happens when the shadows start moving?" Luca frowned. "What do you mean?" Mia hesitated, then said softly, "When you were gone last night, someone called. A woman. She said she knew the truth about my mother." He straightened. "Who?" She didn't give a name. Just said to meet her at St. Catherine's Chapel at midnight. She said she'd been waiting for me. Luca's eyes narrowed. "You're not going." "I have to," she said quickly. "What if she knows something? What if it's another trap?" He snapped. "You think Petrelli was the only one playing games?" Her voice trembled but didn't break. "You promised me we'd figure out who we are. Maybe this is part of that." He clenched his jaw. "Then I'm going with you." She shook her head. "She said to come alone." Luca's stare hardened. "Then she'll have to deal with both of us." That night, the chapel stood on the edge of the city like a forgotten memory, all cracked stone and stained glass, lit only by the flicker of candlelight through dusty windows. Mia stepped out of the car, clutching the pendant around her neck. The cross felt heavier tonight, as if it already knew something she didn't. Luca followed her, every scent sharp. "Stay behind me," he murmured. Inside, the chapel smelled of wax and rain-soaked wood. The silence was so thick it felt like it could shatter. Then, a soft voice echoed from the shadows near the altar. "You came." Mia froze. A woman stepped into the candlelight, her hair streaked with silver, her eyes gentle but haunted. She looked fragile, but her presence filled the room with quiet power. "Who are you?" Mia asked. The woman smiled sadly. "Someone who should have never let you go." Mia's heart skipped. "What are you talking about?" The woman's voice trembled. "My name is Elena Moretti. Your mother—" Mia's breath caught in her throat. No, that's not possible." "My mother died?" Elena whispered. "That's what they told you." "What he told you." Luca stepped forward, his voice sharp. "You're lying." "My mother's alive. I saw her." Elena turned toward him slowly. "Yes, your mother is. But she isn't hers." The words hit like thunder. Mia staggered back, shaking her head. "That's not—" Elena's eyes softened. "The fire you remember wasn't an accident, Mia. It was meant for me. Giovanni Petrelli wanted to erase every trace of what I knew. I sent you away before he could." Luca's voice dropped to a whisper. "What could you possibly know?" Elena looked at him, tears glinting under the candlelight. "That your father didn't die by Petrelli's hand. He made a deal. He was Petrelli's hand." Silence. Luca's heart seemed to stop mid-beat. "You're saying my father was part of him," Elena said softly. "He built the empire that destroyed us. When he tried to leave, Petrelli burned everything, except me and the children. I hid you both, but only one of you survived the night." Mia's lips trembled. "And me?" "You were taken by one of Petrelli's men," Elena whispered. "Sold, passed, forgotten, until he realized he could use you against Luca one day." Luca clenched his fists, every muscle shaking. "So this was all planned." Elena nodded. "Every piece. Every person." Mia's voice was barely audible. "Why now?" "Because Petrelli isn't gone," Elena said, her tone hollow. "And he's not alone." Before either could respond, The chapel doors slammed open. Gunfire shattered the silence. Luca grabbed Mia and pulled her down behind a pew as bullets ripped through the air, splintering wood and shattering glass. Candles toppled, fire spilling across the floor. Elena screamed. Luca looked up just in time to see a figure step through the doorway, face hidden, voice cold. "You should have stayed buried, Moretti." Luca recognized it instantly. Diana Russo. Bleeding from her shoulder, but alive. She raised her gun toward Mia. Petrelli wanted her alive. But me? "I don't take orders anymore." Luca fired first. The bullet hit the pillar beside her, sending stone chips flying. Diana ducked, rolling behind the pews. Mia crawled toward Elena, who was bleeding from a shoulder wound. "Mama, stay with me." Elena's voice was faint. "Get out." Luca moved fast, silent, precise, deadly. He grabbed a fallen candlestick, threw it toward the back pews as a distraction, then lunged around the side. His gun fired once, twice, and Diana fell, hitting the floor with a thud. For a long second, there was only smoke and silence. Then Mia's sobs broke it. "She's bleeding, Luca, she's bleeding." He dropped to his knees beside Elena, pressing his hands against the wound. "Stay with us, Elena. You're not dying here." Her fingers found his wrist weakly. "He's coming for her. He always finishes what he starts." Luca looked up sharply. "Petrelli?" Elena coughed, blood staining her lips. "He's not the only ghost you woke up. There's another, someone worse." Her hand slipped from his. Mia's scream echoed through the burning chapel. Luca caught her before she fell to the floor. He held her close as fire climbed the walls, wrapping them both in its cruel glow. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Too late, as always. Luca lifted Mia and carried her through the smoke, out into the cold night, her tears soaking into his shirt. When they reached the car, she whispered through the sobs. "She called me Luciana. She said he's still coming." Luca looked back at the burning chapel, the place where their past had just rewritten itself in fire and blood. "He can come," Luca said quietly, eyes hard as iron. "This time, we'll be ready." The fire at St. Catherine's burned until dawn. By the time the police arrived, there was nothing left but ashes, smoke, and questions that no one could answer. But Luca and Mia were already gone. They drove for hours, the city shrinking behind them like a bad dream that refused to fade. The roads were wet, the horizon gray, and the silence inside the car felt heavier than the storm outside. Mia stared out the window, her eyes empty. The wind tangled her hair, but she didn't seem to feel it. "She was my mother," she whispered. "All this time, she was alive." Luca's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "She saved you." "Only for me to lose her again," she said softly. "Does that ever stop happening to us?" He didn't answer. There were no words that could fix that kind of loss. When they reached the old vineyard, a Moretti estate long abandoned, Luca parked near the gate. The place was quiet, forgotten, surrounded by dying vines and mist, perfect for hiding. Inside, the air smelled of dust and memories. Mia sat by the fireplace, staring at her mother's pendant clutched in her hand. Luca brought in a small duffel bag, guns, money, a few documents. He worked silently, methodically, the calm before whatever came next. Finally, Mia spoke. "She said someone worse than Petrelli." Luca nodded slowly. "There's always someone worse." She looked at him, eyes tired but searching. "Then who is he?" He sat across from her, elbows on his knees, eyes shadowed. "When my father died, or when I thought he did, there were rumors about a man who came before Petrelli, someone who ran everything from the shadows, the one no one ever saw. They called him Il Fantasma, the ghost." "The ghost?" she repeated. Luca nodded. "He didn't just control men like Petrelli. He created them. Every family, every operation, they all answered to him once." Mia's voice shook. "You think he's still alive?" Luca looked toward the window, where rain streaked down like slow tears. "If Elena said so, I believe her. And if he's coming, we're not safe anywhere." A gust of wind slammed against the shutters, and Mia flinched. Luca stood, walked to her side, and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to be afraid." "I'm not afraid for me," she said quietly. "I'm afraid for you." He managed a faint smile. "You sound like her." Mia turned toward the fire, her voice soft but steady. "Do you ever wish we could go back? Before any of this?" Luca's gaze dropped. "Back doesn't exist for people like us." For a moment, the room was quiet except for the crackle of the fire. Then, a knock. 3 sharp taps on the front door. Luca froze. No one was supposed to know they were here. He motioned for Mia to stay quiet, grabbed his gun, and moved toward the door. The knocks came again, slower this time, deliberate. He looked through the peephole, empty. The vineyard outside stretched silent and dark. Luca opened the door an inch, gun raised, and found a single envelope lying on the ground. No footprints. No sound. He picked it up carefully. The paper was thick, old-fashioned, sealed with red wax. The emblem was unfamiliar. A ghostly insignia carved into the wax, shaped like a mask. He tore it open. Inside was a single line written in elegant handwriting. "You buried the wrong man." His blood went cold. He read it again, slower this time. The ink was smudged slightly, as if written by a trembling hand. Mia stepped forward. "What is it?" He showed her the note. She covered her mouth. I don't think," Luca cut her off. "I know. Petrelli's not the one pulling strings anymore." Mia took a shaky breath. "Then who?" He looked back at the door, then out into the night. The man with no name. That night, Luca barely slept. He sat in the kitchen, the letter on the table beside him, staring at the flames in the small stove. Every sound made him turn his head, the creak of the old floorboards, the rustle of the wind outside. At dawn, Marco arrived, his most trusted man. He stepped in quietly, dripping rain. "You look like hell, boss." "Tell me something new," Luca muttered. Marco tossed his wet coat aside. "Word on the street is there's a new player. No one knows his face, but everyone's scared. They say he's cleaning up the families, starting with Petrelli's old crew." "Cleaning up?" Luca asked. "Burning them," Marco replied grimly. "Warehouse by the docks went up last night. 10 men gone." Luca's eyes darkened. "So he's sending a message," Marco nodded. And this was found at the scene. He slid a photo across the table, a burned playing card. The King of Spades, edges singed, the same ghostly insignia scrawled across it. Luca leaned back slowly. "Il Fantasma." Marco looked uneasy. "What do we do?" Luca didn't answer for a long time. Finally, he said, "We wait. And we watch. He'll come for us eventually. They always do." Mia appeared in the doorway, wearing one of Luca's coats, her face pale but calm. "Then we won't wait," she said softly. "We go first." Luca turned toward her, something unreadable in his eyes. "You've changed," she smiled sadly. "So have you." He looked down at the note again. "You buried the wrong man." And for the first time since the night of the fire, Luca Moretti didn't feel like the hunter anymore. He felt like the prey. Later that evening, Mia sat alone near the vineyard's edge. The wind carried the faint scent of burnt wood from miles away. She turned the pendant in her hands, whispering to the memory of her mother. "You said he's coming, Mama. Who is he?" Somewhere behind her, Luca's phone buzzed. He picked it up, expecting Marco, but the voice on the other end was cold and calm. "Luca Moretti," it said. "You have something that belongs to me." Luca's grip tightened. "Who is this?" The voice chuckled, smooth, ageless, terrifyingly familiar. "Let's just say, I'm the man your father feared most." The line went dead. Luca stared at the phone. Outside, the vines rustled in the wind. But Mia wasn't there anymore. The chair where she'd been sitting swayed slightly in the breeze. And on it, tied with black string, was her mother's cross pendant. The pendant lay on the chair, swinging lightly as if the wind itself carried a message. Luca froze when he saw it. For a moment, his mind refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. Then instinct took over. He grabbed his gun and ran. "Mia!" His voice echoed through the vineyard, but only the night answered back. The fog had thickened, curling between the vines like smoke, swallowing sound and shape. He sprinted down the gravel path, boots splashing through puddles, heart pounding with the old familiar terror. Not of death, but of losing someone again. Then he saw the light, a single headlight in the distance, moving slowly down the dirt road. Then another, and another, 3 black cars. They stopped at the edge of the field. Doors opened in unison. Men in dark coats stepped out, silent, disciplined, armed. Not the chaotic kind of Petrelli's soldiers. These men moved like ghosts. Luca raised his weapon. But before he could fire, a voice came from behind. "Lower it. Luca, you'll want to see this." He turned. A tall man stood by the old oak, half hidden in the fog. His face was aged but sharp, eyes glinting like wet steel. His suit was immaculate, even here in the dirt and mist, and his voice, calm, elegant, lethal. "I've waited a long time to meet you," the man said. Luca kept his gun raised. "You should have stayed waiting," the man smiled faintly. "Do you know who I am?" Luca's jaw tightened. "I have a few guesses." "Then you already know you can't win this way," the man said, stepping closer. "Your father learned that the hard way." Something inside Luca stilled. "My father's dead, is he?" The man tilted his head. Or did he simply change names when the world turned against him? Luca frowned, confused for the first time in years. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," the man said, his tone turning colder, "that you carry his face, his blood, his empire, but not his loyalty." Luca took a slow step forward. "You're lying." "I don't need to lie." The man reached into his coat and pulled out an old photograph. He tossed it toward Luca. It fluttered down like a leaf. Luca bent and picked it up. It was grainy, faded, but there, standing beside a younger version of Petrelli, was his father. And next to them the same man standing before him now, the ghost. Luca's heart pounded. "What do you want?" The man smiled thinly. "The girl," Luca's eyes darkened. "You're not touching her." "You misunderstand," the ghost said softly. "She's not a hostage. She's an heir." Luca's grip on the gun faltered slightly. "What?" "She is Elena's daughter," the ghost continued. "And Elena was mine." The word struck like lightning. Mia. His mother. The ghost. It didn't make sense, but the truth never did in this world. "She's my blood, Luca," the man said. "And you? You were supposed to protect her. Instead, you let her walk into my enemy's hands." Luca shook his head, fury returning to his veins. "You abandoned them. You let Petrelli burn your family." The ghost's calm cracked for the first time. "You think I didn't try to stop him? I built that empire to control chaos, not to watch it consume my children." "But your father—" "Enough," Luca cut in. "You're just another monster pretending to be a savior." The ghost's lips curved into a cold smile. "Perhaps, but I'm the only monster who can keep her alive." Luca aimed the gun directly at his chest. "Where is she?" The ghost nodded toward the cars. "Safe. For now." The fog shifted, and from behind one of the cars, Mia appeared, blindfolded but unharmed, her hands tied. Luca's heart twisted. "Let her go. She will be free," the ghost said. "But you need to listen first." "I'm done listening," Luca growled. The ghost sighed softly. "Then you'll die just like your father." He raised a hand. The men behind him cocked their rifles. Luca dove for cover behind a wooden crate as gunfire erupted. The sound shattered the night. Bullets tearing through the vines, sparks flying. He fired back, hitting one, then another, moving fast and low through the fog. Mia screamed. "Luca!" He sprinted toward her, dodging bullets, his breath ragged. One grazed his arm. He barely felt it. He reached her, ripped off the blindfold, and cut the ropes with his knife. "Run," he ordered. "I'm not leaving you." He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the side fence. "Now, Mia!" But before they could reach it, a shadow moved in front of them. The ghost himself, holding a pistol steady. "Stop," he said quietly. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be gone." Luca stood still, shielding Mia behind him. "You should have pulled the trigger when you had the chance." The ghost's eyes softened slightly, and for a moment, there was something almost human in them. "You remind me of him, your father. The same fire, the same mistake." "What mistake?" "Thinking love could save you." He fired, but not at Luca. A gunshot cracked behind them. One of the ghost's men had moved closer, aiming for Mia. The ghost's bullet hit his own man first. Dropping him instantly, Mia gasped. Luca stared in disbelief. "Why would you—" "Because I told you," the ghost said coldly, lowering the gun. "She's mine to protect." Then, in the distance, sirens. Loud, closing in fast, the ghost looked toward the sound. "Our time is over for tonight." He turned to his men. "Leave them." As the cars retreated, vanishing into the fog, the ghost paused by the gate. "We'll speak again, Luca, but next time, it won't be as enemies." Then he was gone. The silence that followed was deafening. Only the sound of the wind and Mia's soft, trembling breaths remained. She clung to Luca, tears streaking her face. "He said he's my father." Luca held her tighter. "He's a liar, but what if he's not?" Luca looked out into the fog, where the cars had disappeared. "Then we'll find out on our terms. Not his." Mia buried her face in his chest. "What happens now?" Luca exhaled slowly, brushing a hand through her hair. "Now, we stop running. We end this. Together," she nodded against him. "Together." He looked down at her mother's pendant hanging from her neck. The same silver cross, glinting faintly in the moonlight. And for the first time in years, Luca Moretti allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was something stronger than vengeance left in him. But deep inside, a part of him knew. The ghost wasn't finished. He'd started something much bigger than any of them could imagine. And when he returned, the world would burn again. Some stories don't end when the guns stop firing. They just wait in the dark. For someone brave enough to tell them again.